Okay, good day everyone. So for today's class, I'll be discussing layers in Photoshop. So how we're going to work on with layers in Photoshop. We're going to add, delete, and reposition Photoshop layers. At the same time, I'm going to discuss the different blending options or different effects that you can place on a layer and other tricks for you to be able to work on layers in Photoshop. Okay, so this will be our start file. So this will be our working file. So if we're going to open the start file, so basically this is how it looks like. So we have 5 layers already in the layers panel. So as you can see on the right side, so this is the layers panel. And we have 5 layers here. We have the background, layer 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we have layers 1 to 4, and at the same time we have the background layer. Okay, so always remember that we can always make the layer not visible or visible on the workspace. So you have an eye icon on the left side of the thumbnail of the layer. Let's say on the left side of the thumbnail of layer 4. So you have the eye icon here. Okay, you can click to unhide, to make it not visible in the workspace, and you can always bring it back to the workspace by clicking the eye icon again. Yung symbol na eye on the left side. Okay, that's the eye icon to make the layer visible or not visible on your workspace area. Well, sometimes kasi there are instances that you don't need a particular layer that you already created. So if you don't need that on your final output, you can make the layer not visible. Okay? So that will not be included on your final output. If the layer is not visible, let's say for example, yung picture ng apple, yung malaking apple or the big apple picture or photo, if you're going to click the eye icon and make it not visible on the workspace, if you're going to save it, this will if you're going to save it, like for example, you're going to save it as JPEG, so it will not include the Apple photo. Okay, so the final output does not include that particular layer which is not visible on the workspace. Okay, sometimes kasi there are instances that you need to bring back the created layer in the future. So instead of creating it again, you can just make it visible again on the workspace. Okay? So next is we're going to create a new layer. So always remember that the topmost layer will be the most visible part of the workspace. Okay? Meaning to say, yung pinakataas na layer, yun yung mas nakakaangat over other layers. Okay, so we have layers 4, 3, 2, and 1. So this is layer 4. That is the Apple text here. So as you can see, yung 100% natural is below the Apple image because because layer 1 is below layer 2 or the Apple image. So meaning to say, the layer 2 will be most likely visible compared to layer 1 because layer 2 is on top of layer 1. Okay, so always remember, if you're going to create a new layer or you're going to click or to get an image and drag it to the workspace, it will always add a new layer on top of the currently selected layer. So let's say for example, if we're going to create a new layer, so you have a different ways on how you create new layer in Photoshop. You can click the create a new layer button on the lower right corner of Photoshop. So you can create a new layer here, or you can use the menu bar, click layer, new layer, or you can use the Shift Control N as a shortcut, keyboard shortcut to create a new layer. Okay? So let's say for example, if layer 4 is selected, if you're going to create a new layer, it will automatically add on top of layer 4 because the layer 4 is currently selected. Okay? So Shift Control N. Okay? You'll be prompted for the layer name. Just click OK. Okay, so the layer 5 is created and that is on top of layer 4. Because when you create a new layer, the currently selected layer is layer 4. Okay? You can always undo. Control-Alt-Z to undo. Okay, so we can use the Create a New Layer button on the lower right corner of Photoshop. So create a new layer. Then layer 5 is again created on top of layer 4. Next is you can rename the layer if you want. So you can always double click on the label. So let's say for example for the layer 1. So the layer 1 is the stamp here, the 100% natural stamp. So we're going to double click this one and rename it as stamp. Double click on layer 2 label. So let's name it as Apple 1. Double click on layer 3 on the label. Let's label it as Apple 2. Double click layer 4. So we have the Apple text, or let's say that's the label. Okay, so we already renamed the layer because that is very important, especially if you have so many layers in your workspace or in your file. So if you have so many layers in your Photoshop, it's very difficult to look for the layer that you need to edit. So, masyado siya madami na, minsan napakahirap nang hanapin. So, you have to tag or you have to label the layers for you to be able to easily look for that particular layer. Okay? So, another thing is that we can lock layers. For example, I will make yung Apple one the only visible in the workspace. Let's click the eye icon. Okay? So this is the only visible in the workspace. So what we're going to do is we're going to lock. So on the top of the layers panel, we have the lock here. So you have an option to lock transparent pixels. So if you're going to click the lock transparent pixels, so let's say for example, if I'm going to use the move tool, we can still move the position of the image because we only lock the transparent pixels. So this is the portion outside the apple is the transparent pixels. So the gray and white portion is the transparent pixels. So meaning to say there's nothing on that particular pixels. So that is an empty or transparent pixel. Okay? So yung first lock option is you lock transparent pixels. So let's say if you're going to use the brush tool, okay? So we're going to use the brush. Always remember the size of the brush or the size of the tool. Kapag hindi siya visible, the caps lock may be turned on or the caps lock is on. So meaning to say if the caps lock is on, you cannot see the size of a particular tool. So always make sure that you turn off the caps lock for it to be able to see or to make the size of the tool visible in the workspace. Okay, you can use the square bracket to resize the brush size. Okay. So again, this is lock transparent pixels. So if I'm going to draw, or if I'm going to draw something, or going to stroke the brush, so by clicking, okay. So mapapansin nyo, the transparent pixels or outside of the apple, hindi siya nalalagyan ng brush because that is locked. Because we only lock the transparent pixels. Okay? But remember, we can always move this one. Okay? This is not restricted. The movement is not restricted. The only restricted is the transparent pixels. You can always undo to remove the brush strokes. Okay? Ulit, this is a lock transparent pixels. So meaning to say, you cannot do anything on the transparent pixels. Okay? So if you're going to edit, let's say for example, if you're going to use the brush tool and brush over the workspace, so it will not include the transparent pixels. Okay? Let's control Alt Z to undo. Okay, another option is we have the lock image pixels. If I'm going to click the lock image pixels, use the move tool, we can still move. Okay, use the brush again. As you can see, we can move the image, but we cannot brush on it because the entire pixels are locked. Okay, so that is the lock image pixels. Okay, so next button is we have the lock position. So if I'm going to click the lock position, if I'm going to use the move tool or press V, we cannot move the image because that is locked. The position is locked here because we press the lock position button. Okay, but if I'm going to use the brush, we can brush on the image because that is not locked. Okay, let's undo again, Control Alt Z. Or the last option is the lock all. So meaning to say it's totally locked. You cannot move and you cannot edit it. Okay, always remember, the portion, the layer that is selected is the layer which is currently na pwedeng i-edit. Okay? So always make sure to look for the layer which is currently selected. Okay, let's unlock it. Okay, let's unlock all and make everything visible on the workspace. Okay. So next is we're going to arrange the position of all the layers. So as what I mentioned, that the topmost layer is the most visible on the workspace. So in this case, the topmost layer is the Apple label or the label layer. So followed by the Apple 2, followed by Apple 1 and the stamp. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to change the position of the stamp and make it on the topmost layer. So all you have to do is just click on the layer, click and hold your left mouse or your mouse, click and hold and drag it upwards or to the position that you desire. Okay, so or the position that you need to place it. Okay, so we're going to make it on top of all of the layers, including layer 5, which is an empty layer. Let's drag it. Okay, so the 100% natural will now be on top of all of the layers. Okay, so all you have to do is just click the label, the layer, and move it to the position that you want to position it. Okay, so that is repositioning the layers in the workspace. Okay, so next is let's do a free transform. Control T again. Okay, we can rotate. Then we can move. Okay. Press enter if you're done with the rotation. Okay, so next is we're going to decrease the opacity of this particular layer. Yung 100% natural or the stamp layer, we're going to decrease the opacity or medyo palalabuin natin. So since the stamp is already selected, so on top of the layers panel, may makikita yung opacity here. Okay, you can reduce this one. You can click and reduce the opacity. And say, let's reduce a little bit. Okay. Let's move it a little. Okay, so we reduce the opacity here. Okay, so next is we're going to use the set the blending mode for the layer. So sometimes if you wanted to add enhancements to a particular image, there's a predefined enhancements or blending modes in Photoshop. So on the topmost layer, makikita nyo yung set the blending mode for the layer. Okay? So we're going to apply it on the apple image, yung malaking apple. So let's make all of the layers not visible except for apple 1. Except for apple 1. So click apple 1 layer. So make sure that the apple 1 layer is selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a predefined blending mode. So what we're going to do next is we're going to duplicate layer. So if this is apple 1, we're going to create a duplicate of apple 1. So you can duplicate layer by pressing layer, then duplicate layer, or the shortcut is Control J. Okay, let's undo again. Make sure the layer that you're going to duplicate is selected. In this case, we're going to click layer apple 1 or the apple 1 layer. Press Control J to duplicate. Okay, you now have the apple 1 copy. Okay, so we're going to add a blending mode using the pre-default blending mode. So let's start first by clicking on the duplicate copy or apple 1 copy. Then yung sa taas ng layers panel, so there's a drop down here. So set the blending mode for the layer. You can click and select from a predefined blending modes. So in this case, we're going to use the overlay. Okay, so we're going to make the duplicate as an overlay of the original layer. Okay, kung makikita nyo, medyo nag-saturate yung color of the apple because we used a blending mode, predefined blending mode for that particular layer. Okay, you can try the other layers, the other blending modes. Let's say darker colors. Okay, pin light, hard mix. Okay, but in this case, we're going to use the overlay. Okay, so that's the overlay. So we saturated the layer using the blending mode. Okay. So next is let's make all of the layers visible. Make all the layers visible. Okay. So next is we're going to use the blending modes. Okay, in this in Apple 2 layer. So click Apple 2 layer. Okay, we click the Apple 2 layer, then right click and click the blending option. Okay, again, click Apple 2, we're going to apply blending options. So right click on Apple 2 layer, then blending option. So we're going to try different blending options here. Let's say for example, for the stroke, let's add a stroke or parang yung border. Check it. Then this option is the entire blending option. Okay? But if you want to make it particular with the particular blending option, let's say for the stroke, so just click the stroke label. So you have options here. So let's say if you wanted to have a white border, select white. Again, check the stroke. Let's cancel again. Select the layer that you're going to apply blending option. Right click, then blending option, then stroke. Check check the stroke. Then click the stroke label to change the parameters of the blending style or the layer style. So we can click the color here. Then let's say we're going to use white for the stroke. Then we're going to increase the size. Okay. So let's try other colors. Let's make it black. Okay, let's reduce the size again. Okay. So that is for the stroke. We have the color overlay. Okay, but the color overlay, just overlay overlay lang ng isang solid color. Okay, so let's uncheck this one. Okay, we can use the drop shadow. Click the drop shadow. Click the drop shadow label. Then change the parameters. Let's say make it normal. So, gawin natin yung drop shadow as kulay gray. Okay, you can increase the distance, the spread, and the size. Okay. Okay. So, you can try other blending option here. So, you can explore the different blending options. So we have different options here, so it's just a matter of exploring those different blending options. So for different effects on that particular layer. If you're done, just click OK. Okay, so next is we're going to add a shape. So let's say for example we're going to add a shape. So let's make it below the apple one, so that is on top of background. So click the background, then use the shape. Use the shape tool. Let's say for example we're going to use the rectangle tool. Draw a rectangle. Okay. So let's say, let's change the color. Let's make it as dark blue. Okay, so let's make it as dark blue. Okay. Again, let's undo again. By the way, this is the foreground color, so we can use this to select the color of a particular shape. Let's say we're going to use dark blue. Okay, use the rectangle tool. Okay, draw a rectangle here. Okay, So let's make it below the apple one. Okay, let's change the color. So dito sa fill, we can change the color using the fill. Let's try other blue colors. Okay, so we're going to use a little bit lighter blue. Okay. Next is so kung mapapansin nyo, may apples here, or the label. That is the apple. The apple's label here. Okay? So, if you create a new layer, that is an empty layer. For example, yung layer 5, that is an empty layer because that is the new layer that we created. That is on top of the label. Okay, let's say for example, if you're going to brush, let's say if you're going to use a brush and click on those, on that particular layer. So remove that and hide natin yung other layers except for layer 5. Okay? So this is how layer 5 looks like because we use as a brush and brush on that particular layer. Okay? So how are you going to select those dots here? So kasi the new layer is an empty layer. When we brush, we create or we color a pixel on that particular layer. So pwede nating i-select siya. We can select that particular those colors by selecting the pixels. So meaning to say, if at first that is an empty pixels, but we use a brush and we consume those pixels and put a color on it, so we consume pixels. So what we're going to do is we're going to select pixels. Okay? So for you to be able to select the pixels, so make sure that you position the mouse pointer to and click to the thumbnail. Right click, then you have the select pixels here. Okay? When you're going to move, you move all the pixels na may kulay na. Okay? So because that is the consumed pixels within a layer. So it's easier for you to select what is placed on that particular layer. Okay? So mas madaling i-select so what's inside that particular layer. Okay? Again, let's Control D to deselect. For to be able to select it easily, so instead of selecting it one by one, using the add to selection, Control D to deselect, you have an option to right click on the thumbnail, then select pixels. Then you can now move. Right click, select pixels. Then you can now use the move tool and move all those pixels. Okay? Okay. So we can delete the pixels by right clicking. We can delete layer. So we're going to remove layer 5 because we placed dots here. So you can right click, delete layer, or right click and drag it to the trash bin a symbol on the lower right corner of Photoshop. Okay? So we remove the layer 5. Okay. So next is this is the label. So again, just like what we did with the brush, yung mga dots using the brush, so we can use the select pixels to select the apples word here. Okay, so we already select this one. So what we're going to do next is we're going to use the the gradient tool. The gradient tool, so kasama ng paint bucket tool, we can use the gradient tool. Okay? On top, we can change the gradient. Just click on this, on the option bar. Click to edit the gradient. Okay, let's say we're going to select the type of gradient that we want. For example, this one. Click OK. Then click and draw a line. Okay, to create the gradient. Okay. So again, click on this one. Then you can change the color if you want. Let's say, let's make it white. And let's make it maroon. Okay, let's try. Click and dragging the gradient. Okay. So let's try applying blending option again. Just right click, blending option. Let's put a stroke. Take the stroke label. Then let's say let's choose white. Okay. Then resize. Let's try other color. Say, let's try yellow. Or let's try black na din. Click OK. Let's apply gradient again. Let's change the gradient. Let's make it orange na lang din. Okay. Okay, so lastly is we're going to add a cloud effect on the background. So click the background, then click the foreground and the background color. So click yung foreground. So let's say we're going to use blue, light blue. Then make sure that the background is white. Okay, we have the light blue and the white combination on the foreground and background. So for us to add cloud effect, just go to filter, then render, then clouds. Okay. Okay, so that will be our lesson for today. So that is all about layers in Photoshop. So that's how you work on different layers in Photoshop. So for your activity, you have to create the final output just like this one from the start file. So this is the lab 4A end file, and save it as JPEG.